Hey, my name's Rajesh. I'm a multifamily lender in Los Angeles, specializing in 2 to 8 unit multifamily buildings. And today we're going to be analyzing this triplex in Torrance for $1.65 million. So let's take a look at 8 beds and 8 bathrooms. That's pretty good. Um, Building itself looks pretty new. Insides also look recently remodeled. So so far there seems to be a lot of good things going on here. Um, let's see if it actually makes sense though to buy this. And because it's a triplex, it also qualifies for owner occupant um, or primary residence government backed loans such as FHA and conventional and VA loans, where you can get away with doing a much lower down payment. And that's the real advantage, because when you buy a house, you have to pay your own mortgage with the money you earn. But when you buy a multi-family and live in one of the units, you're essentially reducing or subsidizing your cost of living with rental income. So that means all the money that you earn from your regular job stays with you in the best case scenario. Um, and in some cases reduces your cost of living or reduces your housing expenses. And in the very best case scenario, you actually get paid to live there. So let's see if that holds up here. So we're in Torrance, 90501. First thing I want to do is figure out if I can, figure out how much I can get as far as rents are concerned. Average rents. And I like Zillows because they tell me by the bedroom count. So let's take a look here. Studio apartments 1745. One bedroom is 1950. A two bedroom is 2495, and a three bedroom is 3400. Right here, what this says, it's a single family home with 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, rented at 3500 a month. So that lines up pretty closely with this. Um, and two ADUs, one with 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and 3 bedroom, 3 bathrooms. So we know that the 2 bedroom is going to be bringing in 2,500, and the other one's going to be bringing in 3,400. So let's say we want to structure this in, let's say we're a small family, right? You're not necessarily going to be living in in the biggest unit. You're going to be living in the one that gives you the most income. So if you have two units being rented at 3,500 a month each or 3,400 a month each, that's 6,800 or close to $7,000 a month that you're just getting free income from. The issue here, however, is that these are ADUs. So what happens with ADUs as opposed to typical multifamily buildings is that when it comes to government loans, they allow you to count uh, up to 30%, or rather, let me see how to phrase this in the way that makes the most sense. They use the lower rents first instead of the main property rents. So let's say you want to live in one ADU in the ADU and rent out the main building because that gives you more income. You can do that. It's just that when counting the income from it, they're going to count the income from the ADU as opposed to this, because worst case scenario, this is the rental income that you'll get. And when it comes to loans covered by Dodd-Frank, their goal is to make sure that you have the ability to repay. And that means taking the conservative view of things. So, as far as guidelines are concerned, they're going to count the ADU income, not the main property income. The other issue is that when it comes to ADUs, as opposed to like a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex, which have very special zonings and descriptions on the title report, um, they only allow rental income from the property that you will be purchasing and living in to count up to 30% of your regular income, which means that they don't want you to be a professional landlord when you're buying a single family home. They want you to have most of your income coming from your W 2 or self employed job, because this is a single family home, not an AD, not a multi-family building. It's a weird distinction. I think in the future those laws are going to go away, especially as more states start permitting ADUs. Uh, but for now, especially in the California area where I'm based and where I specialize in, um, because it's not as widespread, if it's not a duplex, it's not a triplex, it's not a fourplex, it's a single family home with, let's say, 3 ADUs, 2 ADUs, 1 ADU. That's just the way it is. They require 70% of your total qualifying income to come from your job, and up to 30% can come from um, the rental income. So that's the challenge we're facing with here. And so let's see what that looks like mathematically. So let's say you rent out, the 2 bedroom and the 3 bedroom, because that's all you're allowed to count, because this is, again, a single family home with 2 brand new ADUs. So let's break out the calculator here. 2,500 plus 3,500, $6,000. That's the gross monthly rents. And that, for anyone counting, is roughly $72,000. Now, the other thing about multifamily homes and rental income from even ADUs is they don't count the full $6,000 towards your rental income or towards your qualifying income. They will only count 75% of it. 25% going is built in there to account for vacancies, because again, you're not a professional landlord running a commercial operation. When doing it on professional operations, they allow up to a 10% vacancy, but they're assuming this is not your full-time job, and so they're giving you a lot of leeway by saying, in order to protect themselves and protect Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the buyers of these loans, which are right now government agencies, to prevent, again, the 2008 meltdown, they're requiring only 75% of the gross rental income will count towards your total qualifying income. So let's say 6,000 times 75 is 4,500. And let's say you have no other monthly debts, right? On a property like this, which is 1.65 million times 1.25%, you're looking at annual property taxes of roughly $20,000. So let's get the exact number here. 2612, I believe. Let me double check here. Yep, that's correct. Let's say you have no other debts. You got no car payments, you got no student loans, you have no credit card bills that extend beyond the current month. Everything is paid off, and you earn $130,000 between you and your wife. So maybe one's earning 100,000, one's earning 30,000, maybe one's earning 65, the other's earning 65. Maybe she's earning 120,000, you're just earning 10,000 a year. Doesn't matter, it adds up to roughly $130,000. Hazard insurance on a property like this, cheapest of the cheapest, probably $1,600, but I'm going to cover my bases here and just say 1.8. Interest rate on an FHA loan, if you choose to pay the closing costs out of pocket, your par rate is 5.375%. But let's say you don't want to pay those. You just want to come up with the down payment and use all your cash towards that. So now you're looking at a higher interest rate because the lender and the investor are going to say, hey, we'll cover these closing costs for you in exchange for a higher interest rate. And let's see, qualifying monthly income is $184,000 a year. Your total monthly debts are $1,868. That includes property taxes and insurance. Your max loan amount is $835,000. Base loan amount for LTV is $820,000. You have mortgage insurance because when you get an FHA loan or even a conventional loan, if you're putting less than 20% down on a conventional loan, you're going to have to pay mortgage insurance, PMI, private mortgage insurance, and that's about 1.75% of the loan amount. Once you hit 20% on a conventional loan, it automatically goes away. However, on an FHA loan like this is, the mortgage insurance premium, MIP, is much less than on a conventional loan. It is 0.55% of the loan balance. But the difference is it lasts for life, for the entire life of the loan. So when you finish paying off the loan or you refinance into a conventional loan, that's when the mortgage insurance goes away. And I am looking for max leverage here. This is a maximum home price calculator. And maximum leverage means what's the minimum down payment you had to put. On an FHA loan, that's 3.5%. On a conventional loan, as a first-time home buyer, your minimum down payment is 3%, not 5%. If you don't qualify as a first-time home buyer, meaning you've bought a home and lived in a home within the last 3 years, then you're not a first-time home buyer. If you bought several homes, but you sold them all 5 years ago and you've been renting ever since, guess what? You are a first-time home buyer and you qualify for a 3% down. So let's look at the upfront mortgage insurance premium or funding fee. VA loans come with something called a funding fee. This is 3.3% of the loan amount. Now, the benefit of VA loans is that you put zero down payment, meaning no money goes towards equity, but there is a funding fee that guarantees that the VA program works for future veterans, and that's a 3.3%. So it's like a loan cost, and that would be 3.3% of the loan amount. With the upfront mortgage insurance premium, that's 1.75% of the loan amount rolled into the loan. So this is the upfront down payment on an FHA loan, and that is again 1.75%. Max LTV, you can see here, 96.5, meaning 3.5% comes from the down payment. The max price can be calculated in one of two ways. It can look at your liquidity and divide that by 3.5%, in which case your max purchase price is $1.2 million. And this is a $1.65 million home. So this one is out, which means you'd need a bigger down payment. You need more cash for the down payment. But if we look at just based on your income, including the rents, what is the maximum mortgage payment that you can afford based on that? And that is actually $5,324. And that's just the P&I payment. So it adds this, and this, and then divides that by 46.9%, because that's the max DTI ratio. And it says, what is the maximum rent loan amount that they can support with that payment. And the maximum loan amount that can be supported with that payment is $865,500. Now, that doesn't mean you cannot buy this home. It just means that you had to put about $800,000 down in order to buy it, because the maximum loan amount that they're willing to give you is $865,000. And given in this hypothetical scenario that your liquidity is $42,000, you can't buy it. On the other hand, this is not a loan amount. This is the max price here, 865. Here is the max loan amount, 835,000. So you're actually going to have to put down about $815,000, $814,000. But if you were to buy a home that cost $865,000, your down payment would only be $30,000 that you would have to put down. So let's figure out how to use this to our benefit now. Now that we know this, the way to do that would just be go to price and say, hey, my max purchase price is $865,000. So let's look for homes that qualify for that. Here is an $825,000 home, $825,000 home. Here is a 6-bathroom, $425,000 home. And you'd be wondering, like, why in the world would I choose this? Well, let's see here. This is 6 units, so it would not qualify, unfortunately. But you could get a fix and flip loan for this. That means you get to finance the cost of repairs, fix it up, refinance it, or rent it out, refinance it, and hold on to it, or fix it up, rent it out, refinance it, and then sell it. And a 6-unit in Compton would probably go for, I'm guessing, $2 million. Realtors watching this, please let me know if I'm right or wrong about that. But here's another. This is a duplex in Hawthorne. So for $845,000, this is, I'm betting excuse me, same house it looks like, a duplex. Looks like they're neighboring houses, actually. This is Long Beach. This is a triplex. So if you were willing to move to Long Beach, you might be able to get, excuse me, sometimes I just can't sneeze properly. Let's see what the rents here would be in Long Beach. So 90805. So this is South Bay generally, it seems like. These are the same prices that we saw in Torrance for a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom. So let's see how many bedrooms this property is. There are 2 homes behind the additional units. The front home is a freestanding 2-bedroom, 2-bath residence. So 2 single-car garages and a private backyard. This is a 3-unit property. So technically you could live in a studio and rent out the bigger units and collect more money that way, because this is not an ADU-based property. So let's see what that rental income looks like. We've got the 2-bed, 2-bath, right? Which is $2,500, $2,495, $2,495 plus the 1-bed, 1-bath, which I believe was $1,995, $1,950. So you're looking at rental income of $4,445. for 2 units. And I'm going to get back to this property. That's just the way my mind works. It diverges. 44, 45, I believe. Yep. So let's see the max home price that you can buy here. It drops down to 776,000, assuming you're putting the minimal down payment. The max loan amount is 750,000. This is an $825,000 home, and that means you would have to put in how much? $75,000 down just to buy that place. 825.13 minus 749,437. So you're looking at about $76,000 down. This was 6,000 here. So let's see. So we cannot increase our rents, right? We're sort of stuck there. And the other thing we have to look at, again, is that 70% rule based on rental income. So for ADUs. So we can look at 130, or rather 184 times 0.7 will tell us our minimum yearly annual income from our regular job. And that's, at minimum, we have to be earning 128,000, and in this hypothetical scenario, you're earning 130,000. So that means this property would qualify for a purchase. Now that doesn't mean, let's say this property was earning $8,000 a month in rent, right? So the maximum yeah, I think that will work. So let's say this property was earning $8,000 a month in rent. So we are only allowed to use 6,000 of that because that's 75% of 8,000. So 8,000 a month times 0.75 is 6,000. Now 6,000 times 12 is 72,000. So now we have to see right here. You can see it down here. I got to scroll up so you can see it. It's $200,000 a year, $202,000 a year qualifying income. So what is 30% times 0.3 of $202,000 a year? That's $60,000 a year. So we would not be able to use the full $72,000. We would only be able to use the $60,000, $60,600 plus the 130, giving us a qualifying income of $190,000. So your max loan amount would then be calculated off of the $190,000. So let's see, 60,600 divided by 12 gives us 5,000. Now divided by 0.75 is 6733. So if the rental income was 6733, we would get roughly 190,600, or the max qualifying income that we could use from rental income. And now what your max purchase price is $907,000. And by the way, this number right here looks at the two maximum prices, the two ways of calculating the maximum prices, and selects the lower amount. So let's say max price based on liquidity, which is $42,000, and max LTV, which is 96.5 on an FHA loan, you would get $102,000. And let's prove that here. So $42,000 divided by 3.5%. I don't know what happened there. $42,000 divided by 3.5%. That doesn't sound right. 2,000 divided by 0.035. Let's try that. My calculator doesn't seem to be working, or I'm doing something wrong. Divided by 0.0035. There we go. Yeah, no, that's 12 million now. What the hell? 42,000 divided by 0.035. There we go, $1.2 million. You guys saw that, right? I entered the same numbers over and over again, and it gave me different answers each time. What was up with that? If you know what it was, explain it to me in the comments, please. So your max price is $1.2 million based if you were to use the entire $42,000 as a down payment and you had unlimited income. That's the maximum price of a home you could buy using the maximum leverage. Now, on the other hand, we have this one here, which is $907,000, which is based on this qualifying income and your max principal and interest payments based on the ability to repay rules set forth by Dodd-Frank and things like that. So looking at down payment on a $907,000 home, 907,468 times 3.5%, you're looking at $31,761.38. This rounds it down to $31,761 because apparently this calculator doesn't like decimals. I do actually. I love decimals, but this calculator is simplified just so that we can think in bigger numbers. And so given the two options between max prices, the biggest constraint is your income, so you're limited to 907. So what would it take to actually buy a $1.2 million house grossing that much money? So let's see if it was $140,000, what would that look like? And now your max price is $971. Let's say 170. Let's say 170, yeah. Let's see what that gives us. 1.161. Let's say 175, an additional $5,000 a year. 1.193, so not too far off, maybe 180. Let's see what that would give us. So now you can afford to buy a $1.2 million house, and given that your down payment is $42,000, you're limited to a purchase price of $1.2 million. Your mortgage payment, P&I only, principal and interest, would be $7,500 a month, and your total qualifying income would be $240,000. And here's how this works. So let's say you were buying a $1.2 million single family home, and there were no ADUs, so zero gross rents, right? So you would have to earn $240,000 a year just to be able to purchase a $1.2 million home. To be more specific, we can go 235. Let's see if that works. A little bit too low. So 237,500, 1.205. Maybe we just go 237. What does that look like? Let's say 6750. There we go. Now we're actually pretty close, within $741. So now you can afford, now you know exactly how much you have to earn in order to buy a $1.2 million home cash. We're still not done with this. This is a $1.649 million home we had to figure out. And it earns, and $6,000 of the rents that it collects can be used towards rental income or qualifying income. So how much do you have to earn every year to be able to purchase this home? And we see here we're pretty close with that figure. If you're earning $236,000 a year, you can buy a home that has a max price of $1.5 million. So you can either try to negotiate this price down to that, and we see that it's been on the market for more than a month, not quite 2 months, 44 days. So it may be a possibility, but if the average time on market is, let's say, 3 months, they're not likely going to negotiate. They know that they've just got to hold out for 3 months unless they're in a desperate position to sell. So let's see here. What if we increase our income to $240,000 a year? We're still at 1.564. So let's say we get to $260,000, right? Rental income is still $6,000 a month. Now we're at 1.691 million, and I realize my head's blocking those numbers, so I'll scroll down a little bit so these numbers come up. And now we're at 1.691 million. So you're wondering which family, which husband and wife, or husband, wife is earning $260,000 a year. Well, don't fret, because this is a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom primary home, single family home. So that means, let's say you're living with your in-laws. Okay, and now we can divide that debt up, 260,000 divided by 4 people. Let me double again. This calculator is messing up. 260,000. I know that it should be roughly $60,000 a year each, and then some. $65,000 a year each. There we go. $65,000 a year each. So the other thing we can do here is check this. Median household, let's say median individual income in, what zip code is this? 90501? Yeah, 90501. So per capita income for 90501 is $46,000. This is average income. But if we look at median household income, that is $129,000 a year. So something's not adding up correctly. Median household income, $113,000 a year. So what you can do, again, is buy this property with your in-laws or with your siblings, live in one unit, especially if you're already living in a roommate situation. This makes sense, and I'll tell you why. Because now we come to the whether it is worth doing portion of our analysis. Because now we know what it takes to get it done. Now we just got to ask ourselves, is this worth doing? And over here, you'd need a minimum down payment of, as you can see, roughly $60,000 if you're going to buy this home. So let's get the actual number here. 1649 times 0.035, which is 3.5% on an FHA loan, and you're looking at $57,000 down. Okay, so now we come to the portion of the stream and see if this is actually worth doing. Let's say copy. Let's paste that address here. Let's get this link here and paste that here. The other thing we're going to do, annual average appreciation in 90501. Average home appreciation. Let's see here. Over the past 30 years. So one way to do that is actually scroll down here and see what the home price was 30 years ago. So 2016, this was roughly $430,000. Depending on how far back we can go, let's see. So we got to go back to 1995, right? Tax assessment is $719,000, which is roughly a little less than 50% of the current sales price. But let's say it's 50% of the market value. Okay, so that would place a good price to buy this at about $1.44 million, which is cheaper than the $1.65 million. So assuming that in 2000 this was $200 or $130,000, so $260,000, right? So we bought this home for $260,000 25 years ago. So we go 1649, or let's say 1.44, because just because it's the list price doesn't mean it's the sales price or the actual value of the building. The actual value is whatever people will pay for it, and it's only paid for when it's sold. So let's see here, 1.44 divided by $260,000. And again, this is just a guess that this home was sold for $260,000 in the year 2000, or 25 years ago. Well, almost 26 years ago now. So that gives us a 500%, no, a 553% increase in 25 years, right? Times 100, 553% increase. Now divide that by 25. That gives us, that still doesn't make any sense. Let me see here. Let's go to ChatGPT. So let's see here. Annual average home appreciation rate in 90501 over past 30 years. So let's see what ChatGPT comes up with. Okay, so in Torrance, LA County is roughly 4.84, which I doubt, because I just did Lawndale the other day and that came up with like 8.26%. So who knows how reasonable this is or accurate this is. Let's try google.com. Maybe Gemini can get me a better answer. Let's see here. And actually, let me just copy and paste this prompt here as well. So this is weird. Here is Gemini saying 8.6% annual appreciation rate from late 90s to late 2022, and they're giving me 5.4%. So I wonder how they're doing that. Let's see what ChatGPT says, just because I'm a troublemaker. Gemini says it's about 8.6%. How did you end up with 5.4%? That's a huge discrepancy. saying the previous percentage was used based on faulty index numbers. $5.395. All right, so they're saying 5.9% now. And let's see here. Why did Gemini say 8.6? So in the mid 90s, homes would have had to have been $80,000. But we have present LA Times data showing around here it was $174,000. Used a shorter time frame window, and what we see here is 1990 to 2022. So that actually adds up. So even though this is 30 years, they used the wrong decade. So that could explain that discrepancy. So we will use 5.9% in this calculator. So we are looking at 1.649. We're going to be putting a down payment of 3.5%, 5.875% interest rate, fully amortized. Realtor commissions are 3%. Closing costs are about 3.5%. No rehab loans because that property seems like it's in pretty good condition. Yearly inflation is roughly 3% now, I would guess. Let me see what Google says. Average inflation rate over the past 100 years in Los Angeles County. Okay, so it looks like 3.29%. Let's see what ChatGPT says. .3%. That's not too different from Google's 3.29%. So I'll tell you why this is important. So 3.29%, inflation was appreciation was 5.19. Rental inflation is roughly 3.18. Rental inflation rate over past 30 years in 90501. I'm going to copy that and do the same thing in ChatGPT. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm looking at the long-term benefits of purchasing this property. So we know what it takes to buy it. Now we have to figure out why to buy it. And I like taking the long-term view of that because It might be a bad decision today, but a lot of things that look like bad decisions today, in the future, you're kicking yourself, you're wishing you bought it. For example, Bitcoin. Buy 1,000 digital coins for $1,000 seems like a horrible idea unless you know for certain, looking back, because hindsight is 2020, that 20 years later, 15 years later, each token is going to be roughly $100,000 each. So then you're like, that was stupid of me. I wish I did that. Buying this house might seem impossible today in today's dollars, or might seem overpriced again in today's dollars, but 30 years from now, does it still feel stupid? And I'm going to be calculating a 10% vacancy here because I'm going to assume that between 3 roommates buying, earning about $80,000 a year with the intention of buying something that can increase in appreciation and wealth, and splitting the down payment, which means splitting lower upfront costs, how can we do that in a way that actually makes money? So I'm going to assume between the 3 co-borrowers, or 3 pairs of co-borrowers here, that you're actually going to be looking to minimize vacancies. And so this is not an underwriting calculator. This is an underwriting calculator. And as such, it uses the 25% vacancy rule. But this is more of an investment return calculator or a deal calculator. And so it doesn't need to worry about that. We can say you'd have 0 vacancies, which means you have 0 days without rent. We can use typical vacancies for professional landlords, which is 8%. But I'm going to use 10% because I want to see how good a deal with this, assuming everybody puts in their best efforts. So purchase price is 1.649. I'm going to put that as the projected ARV price, or projected after repair value price, because let's say you bought this home and did a bunch of repairs. Now, what's the value of the home after you did those repairs? That's going to be the day 1 calculation, and see how that appreciates after that starting point. But again, we got to fill in rental inflation. So let's see here. Over the past 12 months, rent rose by 3.65. According to U.S. national data, not specific to LA, rents rise at 2.74% a year. And I want to laugh about this because you have a lot of not economists, but faux economists who say like 2% inflation a year is good. This is 2.74% rent inflation a year, U.S. wide. And just about U.S. wide, rents are considered unaffordable. Think about that. You're promoting policies and laws and policies that promote monetary policies that promote 2% per year inflation. But then you have to live with the consequences of that, which are, unaffordable rents, because that inflates at just about the same rate as inflation. And we see here that actual inflation, based on previous conversations, is that yearly inflation is, or rather just previous searches, not previous conversations, but previous searches, actual inflation over the past 100 years is roughly 3.29% nationwide, but nationwide, rents actually inflated at less than the rate of inflation. So you cannot tell me that a pro-inflation monetary policy is good for people when rents are inflating at less than the rate of inflation. That's just just an aside on monetary policy, I don't really care what side of political aisle you are on, because there are plenty of people on the right who are pro Federal Reserve as well, just when it benefits them. And again, I got none against the Federal Reserve, but you cannot have a monetary policy that encourages inflation and end up with good results, with affordable results for the majority of people, in my personal opinion. And this is why, because even though prices are inflating at higher than the rents are, rent is what's in the news. Rent is what's is considered unaffordable, when in reality everything's unaffordable because of the forced inflation every year. So let's see here. What would a rough estimate look like? For this particular area is 3 to 4%. Over the past 30 years, a 3.5%, 4% growth would produce 3.2x. I know I just rambled through that and you didn't understand a thing I was saying, but I'm reading it pretty quickly. So 3.5% per year annual rental inflation would multiply rents by 2.8 times what it currently is. And 4% per year rental inflation would produce 3.2x higher prices. So looking at this, it's saying it would use roughly 3.5%. So let's see what it says on Google. So for Google, we're looking at roughly 4.94%. Okay, but this is again LA County, and national trends are 3 to 5%. And ChatGPT says 3.5%. And given, the previous searches, ChatGPT has been more accurate than Google. I'm going to go with ChatGPT's answer, and I put it down at 3.18% based on information that I had read about 6 months ago. So let's say 3.5% for today's purposes. So rental inflation is at 3.5%. And we are looking at a home price with a starting value of 1.65 million. We're renting out 2 units. Our monthly rent between the two of them is $6,000. So let's say $3,000 each unit on average, which gives us a rental income of $6,000 a month, or $72,000 a year, minus a 10% vacancy, or $600 short every month. That means on average we're earning actually about $5,400 a month. DSCR ratio, I also use this for calculating investment properties. So we don't really need to worry about that here unless you're buying like a commercial multifamily with 5 or more units, in which case you do need to worry about that. But this is a single family with 2 ADUs. What did we say for insurance here? We said insurance was $1,800 a month, so I'm going to put that here. Now I've got other expenses: legal, gas, water, electric, snow, advertising, maintenance. Maintenance I put at about 10% of gross rents actually collected per month being dedicated towards maintenance costs, because that's just a fact of life. But if you look it up here, over the lifetime of the home ownership, you're looking at about $323,000. So some years you may have a $20,000 expense. Other years you may have absolutely nothing wrong with the home and you don't really have to do much work or much maintenance. Legal, that's for evicting bad tenants. 120, I want to do the math here. 120 times 12 is 1440, so that's probably on the low side. I'm going to put it at $200 a month and say legal fees are going to cost about 200 times 12, 2,400 a year. Um, because again, some years you got no tenants to evict, others you probably have a lot over the lifetime. You're looking at about spending $10,000. That might actually be kind of cheap. Um, let's say $12,000. I'd say 12,000 is a good estimate over the lifetime of the property, because you're going to have tenants that stay there for 5 years, never have to worry about it. Then you're going to have tenants that stop paying after the very first month or after 3 months, and then you're going to have to evict them, and that process could drain you. So and I bet after it drains you the first time, you're going to be a lot more cautious about your screening procedures and who you let into your home. So it's going to cost a lot at that one time where you've not learned your lesson. But after you learn your lesson, it's going to be a lot cheaper, um, and you're not really going to have to worry about it too much. But I would suggest setting an account up where you take the rents and you just take $250 from it and put it in there as a legal savings account or something, an eviction savings account. Um, so let's see what this looks like here. This is telling us that our monthly cost, I want to add all these numbers up here so that, that we know what our monthly payments are. 10405 plus 1868 plus 748. So we know that we're paying $13,000 a month in the mortgage payments. And now we get, minus the $6,000 a month that you're collecting from rental income. But let's say after you take away the vacancy factor of 10%, you're getting $5,400 a month. So your rent between the three people, the three three pairs of co-borrowers living in the 3-bedroom, 3-bath house, meaning each of you get your own bathroom at the very least, divide that by 3, you're each responsible for $2,540 a month. And you're like, that's ridiculous. I'm getting a roommate situation and I'm paying $2,500 a month. Yes and no. You're paying $2,500 a month. Part of that's going towards equity, and you're essentially an owner. So you're losing as a whole roughly $77,000 a year between all 3 pairs of co-borrowers, and you get to write off those from your taxes in terms of mortgage interest and building depreciation. That means if you're earning between the 6 of you a total of $260,000 a year or $65,000 a year in taxes, a significant portion of that gets to be written off, which means you're essentially paying 0 taxes now. Let's see what that looks like in terms of exit. So let's say you sold in your 20th year. You sell anytime before your 10th year, you're losing money. Even on your 10th year, you're losing money. So somewhere between the 10th year and the 20th year, you actually start turning a profit based on all the money that you've earned in terms of cash flow and all the money you've earned in terms of equity appreciation. And what we can see here is that during this ownership process, you actually earn nothing in terms of cash flow. You're just reducing your cost of home ownership here. So you pretty much lose all that money in cash flow because you're paying money, but compared to getting a stock, right? Your annual return is 5.9% plus the supposed 3.5% in yearly inflation, rental inflation, sorry. So if you sell this in 30 years for the 20 grand or 65 grand total, right? That was a down payment. Let's see, 60 grand. So each co-borrower pair put down $20,000. So that means on your individual $20,000, you are getting, let's see here, 2659768.08 divided by 3. So each co-borrower pair is for the $20,000 investment that they put in and all the personal funds that they put in terms of mortgage payments or the $2,500 a month that they were paying. They get to walk away with a cool $886,000. Now let's see how an investment-minded person might do this. So they say owner occupied. That means I gotta live in it until for at least 1 year just to qualify for the government loan, right? But after a year, we can all move out, and now it's just an investment property, right? So let's see what happens then if you move out, and let's say you live in there for a year. You're not living in there for 30 years. You're not paying $2,500 a month for 30 years. You live in there for a year, right? And after the first year, after you meet the minimum threshold, you decide, hey, you know what? We're just going to go rent. And all the roommates are like, hell yeah, because you're all on the same page and you trust each other and they're actually trustworthy. Everybody goes their own separate ways. They've not sold the property. It's just a rental property with 3 co-owners or 3 pairs of co-owners. So it might be 2 couples. And yeah, so let's see here what that looks like. That's what was the total rents here now. So we're looking at a 2-bedroom house, 1 2-bedroom unit, right? 2-bedroom, correct. So we got 3,500 plus 3,400, 3,500 plus 3,400 plus 24.95 for the 2-bedroom. So we're now looking at gross rents of $93.95, and let's divide that by 3 units. So we're getting about $31.31 per unit. $31.31 per unit. With the same vacancy factors, everybody's paying their own utilities. Nothing else changes. And now your net operating income is $3 million. Over the lifetime of the loan, you're actually losing only $500,000 a year because you're getting rent from that 3rd unit. Net income, you're still getting to write off all those interest expenses and everything. And now, what you get in terms of exit, you can make a profit in your 10th year of only $32,000, but you're able to get to profit a lot sooner than you were with the previous scenario where you continued living in it. 20th year, $1.475 million, roughly the same. 30th year, $4.9 million if you're only counting the 30th year's expenses. If you look at it on a cumulative basis, you are actually getting $4.377 million, right? So 4.377 million, 377,490.76 divided by 3. So now each of you are walking away with $1.46 million. And your original investment stays the same, which was $20,000. So now you just turned $20,000 into $1.46 million. That's a great return on investment. Right here it says cash on cash return, which is 26,000% or 2,600%. So let's say here 26,660.9 divided by 30 years. And that's, again, why do I keep doing this? It says 88%. Let's see here. Let's find out a CAGR calculator, right? So calculate CAGR over 30 years for a 26,680 percent 660. Whoops. Percent return for a total reverse calculate. So this will tell us our annualized return. So you're getting an 11.73% return per year, which is still higher than the S&P 500, which averages between 8 to 10% a year. So this is not, and your initial investment is only $20,000 a year. But we also had to look at the total expenses, right? The total debt service. So if we look here at the debt service per section, we've got, this will tell it to us as well. So let's just manually add that up right there. We get 10405 plus 1868 plus 748. So this is your monthly mortgage payment on this building, right? Yeah, and your total rental income, your total income is roughly $93.93 a month. After you take a vacancy, it's $84.53 a month. So minus $84.53 a month, that's $4,568. Divide that by 3, because you got 3 pairs of, or 3 co-borrowers, 3 pairs of co-borrowers here. So now each person is paying $1,500 a month additionally towards this investment. And you're thinking, that's ridiculous. I got to pay rent and a mortgage? Yes. In the flattest sense, yes. But here's another way to reframe that. Here's another way to think of it. You can take $20,000 and put it in the stock market, the S&P 500, and then purchase $1,522 worth of stock every single month, right? Because this is a monthly payment. So let's see here, annual compound interest calculator, right? And let's see which ends up with more money. So the principal was $20,000 that you each put in. Your annual rate is, I don't know what that is. I'm going to guess that's the 8.8 to 10%. Let's say 10%. Okay, compounds annually, time in years, 30. And let's see what that looks like. So if you put that $20,000 into the S&P 500 and never put another payment in, you would get roughly $348,000, $349,000. Here is a better one because it takes monthly contribution. So initial investment $20,000. We say 15. What was it? 1522, I believe. 1522, right? 1522, length of time in years, 30 years, estimated interest rate, again, 10%. Annually, let's say, calculate. What are we getting? You will have $3.35 million. Hey, yeah, so don't buy that house then. Do not buy that house if you're investment minded. This is a bad decision according to this. Let's see what if the estimated interest rate would be 8%. Now you're at 2.2 million. You're still doing better than buying this house. Wow. Okay, that's good to know. I'm glad I went through this process. So yeah, if you got $20,000 and you got an extra $1,500 a month to spare, put in the S&P 500 and not into this home. So this only really makes sense if this purchase price was lower. And to be honest, a single family with 2 ADUs, as big and beautiful as this home is, it's not really going to work out as a good investment. It might help offset some of your expenses. So let's say you had 2 units here, 6,000 each. This really makes sense as an offset. Um, and even then, I would say it's overpriced, right? Because your down payment is still the same. So let's see what happens if we take that full 60,000 here. And then we did, what was it? What's the rental income? 5,400, I believe. Yeah, 5,400 a month. That's what we used. 6,000. No, so this would be 3,000 right there. So 5,400 a month, and then we use that $13,000 figure, right? So let me add that back up. 10405 plus 1868 plus 748. So you're looking at that minus 5,400. So that means you're putting in 7621. 7621. Annual interest rate 8%. And let's see what you end up with in the stock market. You walk away with $11 million versus, I believe it was, $2.6 million. So yeah, this property is overpriced. You're better off renting in this case, to be honest. Realtors, take note. This is the way your buyers are thinking. What you do with that information is up to you. You might be able to come up with a better justification for this, which is awesome in that case, because that's the way your clients are thinking, and this is the objections you are going to have to overcome. So yeah, I hope that helped.